Hey everybody. So we're a couple minutes. All right. So we're back up here. Oh, I don't want that there. All right, well, we might as well begin here. We're just about 1 minute to share. I was going to bring up here, but my mouse has gone haywire. And that's going to start here in just tomorrow morning. So this is kind of all a little bit of preliminary stuff. And we had kind of like the summary of like the first segment of the book of Exodus, and we had this genealogy, which was kind of weird in the middle of everything. It wasn't weird actually; it was very well placed. Kind of breaks things up from the first portion, and so there's not a lot of activity there for us. Just different things, and then these kind of preliminary pieces uh, coming up onto the 10 plagues. So there's a couple of pieces here that are kind of interesting. There's kind of a 191 pattern. There's actually 10 plagues, but there's kind of this serpents into rods into serpents thing that comes up first. So there's kind of like 11 altogether of these things. But this first one doesn't really, it doesn't hurt anybody. It's just kind of a demonstration of God's power. So as you know, they come in before Pharaoh and they're getting instruction. And like I say, tomorrow we'll carry on with the next piece. But yeah, the rods are cast down, and then it seems that Aaron's rod or Moses' rod, Moses must have handed his rod perhaps to Aaron, he cast it down. The rod becomes a serpent. Pharaoh had asked, God had instructed them, if Pharaoh asked for a miracle, this is what you do. So of course, God already knew that Pharaoh was going to ask. And so and how do they do that? So that's kind of an interesting question. So let's just think about it for a minute here. Does Satan, does he have creative power? Can Satan cause his agents to turn a stick, a rod, into a animated creature? Is there anywhere in the Bible that would suggest that Lucifer has those kind of powers? I mean, yes, he's a strong, wise, super smart, super powerful angel, a fallen angel. Does he have creative power? See, I'm kind of cutting to the chase here. And I don't believe we find anywhere that he has creative power. Now, Satan is pretty good at Photoshop. Satan is pretty good at faking and putting in deceptions. And so I believe that this is more of when the rod was cast down by God's agents, Moses and Aaron, that rod was literally transformed from being a big long stick to being a living creature. I don't believe that was just an appearance. God actually transformed it. And so that's what happened there. It seems as though theirs were turned into serpents as well. Now remember, Hebrew is sort of, I guess you would call it a word poor language. A lot of words are reused, very sparse language, and it's not really super needful. We're having trouble with connection here. But Satan is very good at putting in deception. He's very good at putting appearances. Read Revelation 3. His activities are full of deception. And so, yeah, I think that he's making it appear that those other rods are turned into serpents. They're not actually turned into serpents. How it was accomplished? We're not really. God prevails, and so that's what we want. God prevails. Now, somewhere here, I've got Stuart, and I didn't think I was going to read you this line in Stuart. I think it's of interest to you. We can find it here quickly enough. what Stuart has to say on this very question. And let's see here. Yeah. So here's what Stewart says on his commentary, page 194, 195. Four considerations provide resolution to these questions. First, Moses and Aaron were not magicians. What God did through them was genuine, turning a piece of wood into an animal. I agree. The Egyptians, on the other hand, were magicians. And the simplest reading of the text is one that assumes they imitated, and he has in italics for emphasis here, that they imitated by magical deception what Aaron had done by divine power. For a Pharaoh eager not to be persuaded to believe in a foreigner, boy, I don't know how that's going to look in the end. It says it's the connections going up and down. So my apologies for that. So anyway, kind of a precursor to the 10 plagues here. Pharaoh's not going to relent. Pharaoh's going to get grumpy and go off into his house. And then we're going to come to the first of the 10 plagues. Another piece of this plague thing and the build-up, because there's kind of like 11 pieces here, not just 10. This is the first one. Another piece that's kind of interesting is, God goes up from plague to plague. It's kind of a stair step. Each one is more severe than the previous one. And so would God expect Pharaoh to be persuaded by this small demonstration, this little kind of small version, the small thing that turning a rod into a serpent? Would God expect Pharaoh to say, "Oh man, I'm trumped, I'm done. Go ahead and you guys go"? But I think before we jump to a conclusion like why is God using these tiny things? Remember, God is building up to this giant 10th plague. So there's kind of a great gradation. The rich man and Lazarus, and in the parable, it's a parable. It's not a literal thing, but it's a parable. And in the parable, the rich, the one guy says to Jesus, "Okay, now that I'm dead, but my brothers are still alive. Go and if one from the dead appears to them, they'll be persuaded, to follow the right thing." And Jesus. So anyway, we don't have a very good connection here. So yeah, I think that if you and also Jesus says if you don't obey the smaller things, how are you going to obey the larger things? If you're not faithful in that which increasing intensity, yeah, that God has a way of working with this. So you've got these people, they're watching. All Pharaoh's court is watching. Pharaoh's watching, and but Pharaoh is not anxious to be. So yeah. All right. So let's shift gears here a little bit. Just wanted to think about that. Just to finish this, the God that we serve has creative power. Satan does not have creative power. He has high deceptive power. He's Mr. Photoshop in the most negative sense. So yeah, we're looking at two very different pieces here. The God's claim to worship. The reason we worship him is because he has creative power. That's different from everybody else. There's nobody else on the list. This is a list of just God, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. That's the only power for creative, turning creation ex nihilo, creation from nothing into something. That's what God can do, and nobody else can do that. Nobody else can pull that off. So yeah, that's what we have going on here. So anyway, and in this case, it's the staff to serpent and back to the staff. So other thing we've done here this week is I think there's a video or two out. The Church of England that I put up. Church of England activated same-sex blessing. This is a giant conflict within that body. I'm not a Church of England. I'm different, but within the Church of England, this is gigantic. There's 90 or 92 or 96 million adherents to Anglicanism. The Church of England is the key church in Anglicanism. The Archbishop Welby, he's the kind of like the de facto leader. He's kind of the leader of the whole communion, and he's also part of the Church of England. So, but what you have 70 to 72 million or 76 million out of those 90 some million Anglicans. They are located, most of them, in Africa. and they're part of GAFCON, which is Global Anglican Future Conference. And they were really frustrated, especially by these sexual declines, these apostasies happening within the Church of England and elsewhere and in America. Yeah. So what they had is they came up with this meeting back. I forgot if it was 2011 or whenever it was. They met in Jerusalem. These global African primates and leaders in that church, and they kind of came up with a list, kind of a list of teachings that they support. And they said, we're going to start defining Anglicanism based on this, not based on whether we're connected or not connected with Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury. So I think we're live again. So yeah, anyway, just to finish this piece, and maybe we'll finish today. We seem to have a bad connection. So yeah, these people are not putting it up with it, and they even put out an announcement on the 10th that said, anybody who would be in connection with offering same-sex blessings, we suggest you kind of disengage from those groups. We don't regard that as real anymore, as true Anglicanism anymore. So there's a giant global split in that body because what? Because in the West you have because what? Because in the West um, you have this, especially in Europe and America. You have especially this idea that especially in Europe and America, you have especially this idea that like two men can be married to each other and somehow it's not wrong. uh, so anyway, our standard here is the Bible. It's not culture. And so, anyway, there's a 8 or 9 minute video I put out about that issue because that's giant. They voted in a meeting. They had a big meeting with the three houses together, the bishops and different three groups. Anyway, the thing passed just barely, but they passed, and so now they're going to activate. They've activated same-sex blessings, and they say they could be going as soon as April 2024. So that's a giant schism right there in that body, that religious body. And yeah, why wouldn't it be? Because it's like, if you can't get human sexuality right, which is kind of simple in the Bible. I mean, yeah, Genesis 1 and 2 sort of nails it. If you can't get that straight, why would we trust you when you can't get basic pieces of the human experience right? It's like, yeah, that's kind of hard to fathom. So anyway, you have that going on. Well, I don't know if this is getting through because our link seems to be especially bad. So you might have noticed the guitar twanging at the front is missing this morning because I ran out of space on my computer and I was trying to edit that video and I uh, deleted the wrong thing. So the guitar piece is the sound is still there, but the video is missing. Well, I don't know if I can find it or if it's worth finding, but anyway, um, yeah, different piece. All right, well, I think we'll just leave it there since our connection is really funky today and I haven't seen anybody show up. So this whole thing may go down the drain. We'll do it next week. But God be with you. I hope you're blessed this week and coming each morning by morning. We'll go right now, going straight on into the 10 plagues and see how Pharaoh begins to feel about this stuff and his buddies. All right, God bless you. God walk with you, and you be blessed this week, and we'll see you.